Steve Austin.
Chapter 5. In the precise moment. Jerome laid flat of his back on the floor of the raft as it floated down Dissel Creek, guided by the raftsman, Gentry. He was deep into the euphoric state of splendetta. Several different topics were revolving around his semi-conscious mind. But that wasn't an issue, as one of the things splendetta facilitates is allowing one to maintain multiple trains of thought simultaneously. The conversations he had the previous night with Mithila and the following morning with Parthis were among the topics whirling around in his mental multiplicity. Secondary to that was why he was being prompted by his inner Manista to make for Dawn Avarice. But foremost, the third topic he was pondering was perhaps the most troubling. Why was Minerva purposefully showing her hand concerning the torturous activities occurring at the distillery? Was it to divert attention from some other endeavor she and the Order were involved with? The obvious conclusion one would first jump to was that she was brainwashing the ogres to create an army that was loyal to the Order beyond the bond a simple oath would create. A force that would fight to the death without any concern for their own well-being. A force that would attack with reckless abandon without question when ordered. Quite a frightening scenario for the other species of Aeros. But if that were the case, would she not conceal her plan as long as possible to give whomever she was planning to attack the minimal amount of time to prepare? Or it could be that she was purposefully drawing attention to the distillery because the first wave of assault would come from elsewhere, thus catching the enemy by surprise. Or does the plot she is hatching have little or nothing to do with declaring war on Aeros? It could be that Minerva was attempting to turn the sworn enemy of the Order into slaves, loyal to the Order beyond question. The witches wouldn't be the first species in Aeros to attempt to enslave another. The Bartane elves had enslaved the Ganaranese for several decades before they finally annihilated them. That would be the least destructive possibility for Aronian society at large. Yet as vile as they are, Proc ogres have the same desire for, and right to, freedom any other species in Aeros has. Jerome was jarred from splendetta as Gentry gently shook him.
Sir, you instructed me to wake you when we arrived in Dan's, and we are here.
Obliged, Gentry.
Jerome said as he pulled a coin from his breeches pocket and placed it in Gentry's hand.
For you and yours. Blessings inherent, my good man.
And likewise to you, sir. Until next time,
Gentry said as he placed the tip Jerome had given him in his pocket. Jerome set his feet upon the Great River Road and thus began the 4-mile journey ahead of him.
Well, let's see what tidings abound in Dawn Avarice.
It is Thursday, on the 21st day of Darmay, 10 o'clock in the morning, and Shanaeah and her entourage have arrived in Pandana on a bright and sunny day. She had been captured by the ogres in the wee hours of Sunday morning, so she had been Minerva's prisoner for the better part of 4 days. She had received a very warm welcome upon her arrival by her beloved gnomish friends. They had prepared a table, and she sat and dined among faces she knew and loved. Genevieve, First Lady of Pandana, sat at the head of the table and presided over the festivities. Genevieve functioned as mayor of the Gnome City as her husband, Carvanum, had disappeared years ago in the Tonic Mountains. Ogres were suspected, of course. No one questioned Shanaeah about her experiences at the hands of the ogres. The conversation was light and jovial. The gnomes were always of great cheer whenever Shanaeah came to visit, and taking into account that they feared they might have lost her to Minerva, the mid-morning meal today was exceedingly joyous. After dessert and a few shots of Sarnay, a gnomish brandy, Darkeenum, a handsome gnome, and Shanaeah's dearest friend since childhood, took her by the hand and said,
"If it pleases, milady, a bath has been prepared for her in her suite."
"Oh, yes. A hot bath would feel wonderful, Dar, but dispense with that milady shit and give me a hug, you little wad of sheep dip."
A huge grin encompassed Darkeenum's face as he grabbed Shanaeah and wrapped her in a tight embrace. She returned the hug and kissed Darkeenum lovingly. As the kiss broke, Darkeenum said,
"Your kiss is sweeter than Donavarian honey, but you absolutely reek of ogre. Let's get you to that bath and restore the sweet aroma you usually project. Or you can continue to smell like weasel shit. Whichever suits you."
Shanaeah giggled.
"All right, asshole. I was going to let you wash my girly parts for me, but since you choose to be an insolent little prick, I may not even let you watch."
"Oh well, no big loss. If you've seen one Genarian sprite's Toonch, well, then you pretty much want to see all the rest of them.
Darkeenum teased. Shanaeah guffawed.
Oh, just close your cake hole and take me to my suite and wash my butt for me, you needle-dicked fart monger.
Shanaeah and Darkeenum continued their off-color back and forth, jokingly insulting each other all the way down the long hallway to her suite. We're sure you've figured out that these two go at each other in this manner often, as dear friends. Well, some dear friends often do. If you tend to marvel at the fact that Shanaeah is not curled up in the fetal position crying uncontrollably after what she went through at Minerva's hands, we don't blame you, but consider this. A cherished quality granted Shanaeah from the Genarian sprite contribution to her genealogy is her ability to allow her spirit to be lifted, regardless of how deep in the doldrums they happen to have fallen. A sprite draws her energy from light and love, and being in Pandana swapping insults with her most beloved friend in the world had Shanaeah's spirit soaring. The fact that she had just endured what was most likely the 4 darkest days of her life didn't matter right now. She was among those that she loved, and for a sprite that is sufficient to perpetuate overwhelming joy, regardless of pre-existing circumstance. Shanaeah entered her suite and saw the large wooden tub in the center of the room. Steam rose from the hot water. A table beside the tub held oils, soaps, sponges, and towels. On a chair next to the bed was a fresh set of clothes. Tunic, skirt, belt, bloomers, stockings, and garters, all made for Shanaeah by gnomish tailors. She sat down on the edge of the bed and Darkeenum helped remove her boots. He resisted the urge to kiss her pretty feet, knowing she had been walking the floor of a filthy ogre dungeon barefoot for the last 4 days. She braced herself against the bed, and with her feet flat on the floor, she raised her shapely little bottom so Darkeenum could remove her bloomers. As he slid the underpants past her ankles and laid them in the floor, Shanaeah pretended to accidentally allow Darkeenum a peek at her loveliness.
You little tease.
And just what makes you think I'm teasing?
She answered as she lifted the tunic above her head and removed it, exposing her perky little breasts.
Gorgeous, but you still stink. Get your pretty ass in that tub, Naya.
Kiss my ass, Da.
Gladly, after it has been thoroughly washed.
She shot him a glance, half smirk, half smile, as she lowered herself into the hot, steamy water. She leaned back and relaxed against the rounded head of the tub, resting her head on the bath pillow Darkeenum had placed there. The hot water felt very refreshing after sleeping, or trying to sleep, on the hard dungeon floor for the better part of a week. Darkeenum sat on a chair alongside the tub.
Soak for a while and let the hot water soothe the aches your muscles and bones acquired in the dungeons. You are soaking in tonic water, fresh from the springs. That should speed the healing of those bruises on your arms and legs. Plus, it will help erase your vile stench.
Darkeenum laughed as Shanaeah splashed water at him.
I've let farts that were more worthwhile to society than you, foolish little gnome.
Oh, I'm certain you have. Oh, great highness, whose flatulence smells of honeysuckle. Now, are you ready to be bathed, or do you wish to continue to toss infantile insults at me a while longer?
Can't we do both?
Well, if you insist, milady. If you insist.
With that, Darkeenum rose and picked up soap, oil, and a sponge from the table. He stood at the head of the tub and wet the sponge in the hot tonic water, and after applying oil and soap, he gently washed Shanaeah's face. Periodically replenishing the supply of soap and oil, he worked his way down her long, sensuous body. As he washed her breasts, he took extra care to be gentle and loving as he cleansed his dear friend of the ogre filth from the Rorscian Dungeons.
Oh, Dar, that feels so very good, darling.
As she leaned her head over and kissed his forearm, she said,
I was afraid I might never be touched in a loving manner again, Dar.
Now, Naya. We would have gotten you out of those dungeons if we had to slaughter every ogre in Aeros.
By the way, asshole, where the hell were you while I was being Marfo-witched in that fucking dungeon for 4 days?
I just found out about the whole shitstorm yesterday, and only arrived here a couple of hours before you did.
Yes, but you still didn't answer my question, dickhead. Where the hell were you?
I was apprentice at a lending house, pulling some of my gold out to buy you a nice present.
Bullshit. You were at no lending house. You were in Harless at the Splurt house, most likely.
We have those here, my darling. But if you want to believe I made that trek just for some northern Aronian-noid toonch, well, shit. That does sound like me. don't it?
Shanaeah chuckled as she agreed with Darkeenum. He, like most gnomish males, were quite fond of Noid women.
In all seriousness, though, Nea, you know I would have been there if I could have.
I know, sweetheart. You are a little shit-ass. But a loyal little shit-ass.
As Darkeenum neared her area of endearment with the sponge, Shanaeah tensed in anticipation. Darkeenum smiled at her, bypassed it altogether, and went on to wash her thighs, calves, and feet.
Now who's the tease, you dirty little tree imp?
Shanaeah said with a mild laugh.
Ah, you should know by now I always save the best for last.
Darkeenum said as he worked his way back up her long, slender leg. Shanaeah raised her lower legs out of the tub and hung them over the sides, giving Darkeenum full access to her sweet spot. As Darkeenum's efforts became more and more exaggerated, Shanaeah purred.
That's it, sweetheart. Oh, heavens. Faster, Dar!
Water was beginning to splash upon the floor, as their accelerated movements made the water more and more turbulent.
Oh, fuck. Blessings. Dar! I'm gonna... Orgasmanial!
And as Shanaeah shouted that word, both she and Darkeenum achieved orgasm. She in the tub, Darkeenum in his breeches. The orgasm was so strong the tub was overturned. As they lay in the puddle of warm water on the floor, semi-conscious, the door creaked open and Deneen came in. Deneen sat down on the edge of the bed, watching the two gently writhe on the floor in their post-orgasmic bliss. 20 minutes passed, and slowly Shanaeah and Darkeenum came out of the orgasmic coma the Orgasmanial had put them in. Shanaeah sat up and shook her head slowly. Darkeenum rose and dragged himself to a chair, climbed up and sat down. More accurately, he flopped.
What just happened? What was that word I yelled? Did it cause us to turn the tub over? What?
Deneen interrupted her.
Slow down, dearie. I came to your suite to tell you that runners have been sent eastward to advise Oddicum and Renata that you have been rescued from the dungeons and are safe in the great house of Pandana. As I approached the door, I heard you cast the Marfo spell, Orgasmanial. It intensifies an orgasm tenfold, for the caster and anyone in contact with her. That's why Darkeenum achieved as well, even though his plunger was still within the confines of his breeches.
Oh my. Hail the inherent. But I don't understand. I've never even heard of that spell, much less had any idea what it did or how to cast it. Dar isn't hurt, is he?
Never better, love. I can't stand up, and my testicles are drawn up so tight I could sing soprano in the Dawnavarian chorus, but I have never been this relaxed.
He grinned and winked at her.
He will be fine. No injury comes from the Orgasmanial, just an orgasm of overwhelming intensity. Don't worry, dearie. You probably overheard the term while Minerva held you captive.
Deneen assured her. But Deneen wasn't so sure Shanaeah overheard that spell. She didn't know whether she hoped or feared that there was another reason that spell suddenly came to her at the precise moment it was needed. Not to mention that the Orgasmanial required repetition to achieve potency. Yet Shanaeah had only to say it once, and full potency, perhaps even more than full potency, was immediate. But those suspicions were something Deneen felt better left unspoken for the time being. She needed to do a little research. She needed access to the Yester Library in Dunbury, the Minista capital and chief of the 4 great cities in the northeast. Unfortunately, sprites were not welcome in the 4 great cities. Minerva sat back in the soft, Bernie stuffed leather chair in her study the ogres had made for her outside the dungeonary of Rorsch. Her plans for the week have changed, but not by her design. Tomorrow morning, Friday, she had planned on heading north to the distillery. She had planned on being accompanied on the journey by a dozen freshly brainwashed ogres and a certain elven sprite. An elven sprite who had been broken in the dungeons and due to that would be loyal to the Palatar beyond what oath can guarantee. But due to the ineptitude of a certain ogre that sprite had escaped, Minerva was the youngest witch ever to become Palatar of any order of Panatesis over its entire 2,200-year history. She was installed as Palatar 25 years ago on her 38th birthday, the day she became a legally adult witch. Until Minerva, no witch under the age of 65 had been considered for the office of Palatar. But Minerva was a prodigy. Most witchlings can't even cast the most rudimentary of spells until they were 12 or 13 years old. Minerva was in command of a large portion of advanced spells at the age of 6. Aware of what they had in Minerva, her mothers had the ovikedum performed on her at the age of 16. In Panetesian society, both parents are referred to as mother, even though technically one of the parents did sire the offspring. The contributor of the sperm is referred to as the fraternal mother, or simply the fraternal, the receiver as the maternal mother, or simply the mother. The ovikedum is a ritual which, when performed on a young Marfo witch, renders her incapable of siring or conceiving an offspring. The ovikedum is only performed on specific witches who display the qualities the order prefers in those who would ascend to offices within. Eliminating a witch's ability to procreate increases the power of her magic exponentially. Usually, a witch is required to be 28 years of age before being eligible to have the spell administered. The Palatar of the 10th Order made an exception in Minerva's case, owing to the magnitude of her prodigy. But none of this mattered. She had just suffered defeat. A defeat which, if her suspicions concerning the true nature of the elven sprite in question were accurate, could be the undoing of her plans. It would be much more difficult and perhaps impossible to ambush Shanaeah a second time. No doubt Renata and that meddlesome aunt of hers will put all their efforts into schooling her up in the one area Oedicum refused to add to her educational upbringing. This was another fact that concerned Minerva greatly. Shanaeah had never had any formal instruction in magic. Minerva couldn't know that Shanaeah was the one foretold, but there was some reason she was able to so easily subdue the Palatar with magic she had never practiced before in her young life. To Minerva's advantage, though, no one else in Aeros could suspect that she was the one foretold, as all the writings of the Ganarinese were locked away in the Yester library centuries ago when they were conquered by the Bartanian elves. The Manista, self-absorbed in the pomposity of their precious logic, had ceased to study the old manuscripts, deeming them little more than folk tales having no bearing on modern times. So the writings had been locked away, unread for an age and a year. At least she hoped no one else could suspect. The only possibility would be that some obscure folklore passed down through the generations held clues to the identity of the one foretold. Would anyone pay heed to such tales? She hoped not. Perhaps, though, there is a cloud to go along with the silver lining Shanaeah had been so fortunate as to end up grabbing hold of. According to the intel thieves she had employed, not gnomish, of course, exiled Bartanians. More on that later. Her plan to have the popular Aeronian consensus swayed toward believing she was breeding an army of proc-ogres to declare war was apparently working. Word of this had spread from Pandana to Port Parsis. At this point, the capture of Shanaeah seemed incidental. As far as anyone knows, Shanaeah stumbled onto Minerva unaware, and was taken by the ogres for invading their territory. The fact that Minerva needed Shanaeah enslaved, to at the least keep her out of the way, and keep her from realizing her potential, and at most to use a brainwashed Shanaeah and her magic to serve the Palatar, was information only Minerva had. Nor was anyone outside the Disselry aware she had her intel thieves shadowing Shanaeah for months now. Yes, a brainwashed Shanaeah would have been quite useful, but it could be that having her hostage would have got the powers that be thinking something other than an ogre war was being prepared by the Order. Perhaps it all worked out for the best. Perhaps. Mithila lay motionless, staring at the ceiling. Her mind had been running at a frantic pace ever since her conversation with Jerome the previous evening. She hadn't really slept since awaking from the throes of orgasmanial on the floor of Jerome's suite. Upon her awakening and discovering Jerome and Tania quite involved with each other, she rose quietly and walked back to her own room. She tried to sleep, but she simply could not do more than doze a bit before her racing thoughts jarred her back to consciousness. Mithila thought to herself,
"So Minerva has finally set her plans in motion. I've dreaded this day since she first started describing her plans to place Aeros under Marfo rule to me. A plan Minerva is so obsessed with it ruined a friendship that had spanned the better part of 3 decades. How did she become so cold? Marfo witches aren't exactly known for their warmth, but Minerva seems devoid of it altogether. Something had changed in her at the death of her fraternal mother when she was 30 years old. A hatred arose in her that wasn't there before. A deep hatred for all non-witch species. Why? Minerva wouldn't talk about it. Not even to me.
Mithila and Minerva had been childhood friends. Their mothers had known each other since childhood as well. So Mithila and Minerva, born exactly 1 month apart, were practically cribmates. They were inseparable up until they turned 30, and Minerva's fraternal died. After Minerva was installed as Palatar and began altering or ignoring Marfo doctrine, the gap between the two expanded even further. When she discovered the entirety of Minerva's devilish plan, she left the order and Minerva placed her under Mordebrae, the Marfo death warrant. That was over 10 years ago, and she had been working for Parthas at the Wayward Maid ever since.
Was it time to reveal all I know about Minerva's plot to those of power in Aeros? My fear of Minerva is great, but is it greater than my fear of what her plan would accomplish? I should have petitioned to have Minerva impeached years ago before her sway with the Panatetian Parliament became so great, before she had time to bully all 12 members into believing her ideas were in the best interest of Panatesis. But that is spilt Marfo milk at this point. The time for that is long past. The Marfo Parliament is corrupted now, just as corrupt as Minerva. The order may well be lost. I know a few who still cling to doctrine as it was originally conceived. Was it loyalty to my sisters in the order or my own cowardice that caused me to be hesitant in reporting Minerva's plot to the powers that be? I need a shoulder to cry on. I need a true friend to take solace in. I need Denari.